So let's talk a little bit, dig into why the increase in applications, because there's a lot going on here. We've seen the application inflation happen. We've seen about a 20% growth in applications from that 2020 period to 2022. Texas applicants are up. Texas applicants are also attractive to many colleges around the country because we are an area that's growing with students. Now, if we look at the big public universities, I think this is a really interesting spot to kind of dig in a little bit, because there's a number of things that we saw happen at big state colleges that surprised us this year. One of them was that as colleges come on the Common Application, they get more applications. And so like Auburn is one where two trends collided, if you will, okay? One is that you had Auburn going on the Common Application, and then you had Auburn also becoming more difficult as they were getting those more applications. And the way they did that was on the test optional side. So they took more interest in tests than they had in the past. So there was kind of a couple of things going on. If we were to look at a UC Berkeley, what we've got going on in the UC system is a really big push by the state to accept more in-state candidates, which is pressing out of state. And then you put into that also that increased number of applications, and it's becoming even more and more competitive. The other thing that I would say that we have seen in the Southern schools is a real push towards more focus on test scores, and that was a little bit surprising to some students. But these numbers will also relate to, and Bob will talk about this later, where you don't see the admit rate even smaller is in some of the really popular majors. And that's, I think, something that really surprised students last year, is some schools that they thought they might get in, but they were going for those majors. So a lot going on in the big public flagships universities. And the last thing I would say about it is that one of the things is, as students apply to the more selective schools and they get more selective, many students are going for adding in these kind of, flagship public schools, which has then increased that number too. So as I said, a lot going on in those big public universities in the last year. In addition, we have seen the selective private colleges over the last few years become more selective. And if you look at these numbers, some of them are just mind-boggling in terms of the just large increase in applications in a short period of time. One of them that's caught a lot of people's eyes, Northeastern, which if you just look, probably 5 years back, Northeastern was probably a 35% acceptance rate. It's down to 7%. So, it is on fire. It's on fire because its co-op program is very attractive, and it's in Boston. So it has a lot of things that students want. Therefore, it's becoming more and more selective. Now, you'll notice that some of the Ivy League schools chose not to release their admit rates, like Stanford. We know that like Harvard and most of these schools are sitting around the 3 to 4%, right in there, maybe even a little lower. So definitely becoming more selective as well. One area we thought was especially interesting just to take a case study of, because this is a trip that many students will take as their first college trip. They'll go to Boston. They usually see Boston University, Boston College. Many times they see Northeastern, Tufts, possibly Harvard and MIT. Look at what's happening in the Boston colleges. They're just plummeting in their admit rates, and especially over this arc of time. The reason we thought it was interesting to hone in on this is some of this is regional. Why does everyone pack up their bags and go to Boston as their first college trip, which is so common? Because it's kind of the premier college town in America, right? Like that, there's over 35 schools there. There's tons of students there. And it just kind of reeks of college activity and academia. And so one thing, as you look at this and you see the application growth of something like the Boston region, one possibility for families is to move your regions a little bit, because look, everyone is going there. So we'll talk a little bit more about how making some regional shifts in your college list could definitely help you. So what are the implications when we look at this massive increase in, college applications? A balanced college list is the key, and I do mean the key, to making sure that you have a really good college experience as you're applying, right? A college application experience. Many students are putting so many reach colleges on their lists. And what we're going to suggest to you is that you spend more time on your possibles. Those colleges, what we call a possible, is you match with them academically, extracurricularly, across the board. Because if you have all A's, but you haven't taken a lot of rigorous coursework, and maybe you don't have a test score, and you've done a little bit of leadership, like that's you're going to need to look at a different group of possibles, because all those factors are coming into account. So one of the things you really, and parents, I really encourage you to spend time with your students on this. Be curious about the possible schools and the match schools. Go visit them, because we did a thing with our students this last year that was really helpful. We actually made the students really be able to articulate in much greater detail why they would want to go to their match schools and their possible schools, so that if that did become what happened, that they were going to be happy with those choices. So our number one piece of advice is making sure that you have a balanced college list. The other thing, as you're doing that, how do you know what you want in a college? I think that we have become much more focused on name brand, which there's a lot of great name brand schools, and there's a lot of good schools that don't fall in that. But trying to think about what the student wants in the classroom, in the community, what has worked for this student in the past? Where do they thrive? Do they do great in a big lecture hall? Do they do better in small groups? All those kind of things. Spend more time thinking about what the college environment for the student is going to look like and feel like before you start getting to names. And then make sure that you're also considering your financial parameters. That's going to be an important thing to know out the gate. Also, your location parameters. Are there certain places that fit better with your family? And finally, as I said before, a variety of acceptance levels, because no matter how bright a student is, a 3% acceptance rate is a big reach for every student. There's not a student that's not a reach for. Doesn't mean that some won't get in, but it does. You don't want to bank everything on that.
One comment to jump in here. If a student at the start of developing her college list is going to get to know what she likes in colleges, she should get to know what she likes in colleges starting with her possibles, not her reaches. Trying to figure out which Ivy to apply to is a late stage list conversation. An early stage list conversation, once you identify your criteria, is let's start with possibles and really learn what we're looking for in a college.
The other thing that I think is so important is, where is the student actually going to thrive? So it's going back to how's the student going to thrive? Because what we know in terms of post-college success, it's what students do, not just where they go. One of the things that we constantly work on with our students is getting them engaged right now. Learn how to thrive right now, because you're going to then thrive in the college that you attend. So I think as a possibility is spending less time just focused on the names of the colleges and more time helping the student actually thrive, which will ultimately help them thrive in college. A few other where I think some hidden gems are still there, because, you know, as much as we talk about, oh, there's an increase in applications and all of this, there are a lot of places that are still really excited about students. There's a lot of great programs. There's a lot of ways to go at this. So as Bob said, this is not a scarcity model. The small liberal arts colleges offer a lot of opportunity. Many of them offer a lot of great merit aid. So that's one spot to look at. Especially good for pre-med students, because getting that experience in a lab early on is far superior than kind of elbowing your way out in a big college. The honors colleges and less competitive colleges are great values. And so those can be a great way to get in a very prestigious program at maybe a school that isn't quite as competitive to get in. In general, I would say the Midwest there's still some real opportunity there. Now, I would throw a few schools like Northwestern and U Chicago probably don't fall into that camp, but there are a lot of great opportunities in the Midwest. And I think we do see that they are a little less competitive because of region. Again, a lot of this does not have to do with the actual quality of the education. It has to do with where a place is, a lot of factors. Finally, look for a college that is really strong in the area of study that you want to be in, but maybe isn't as competitive overall. So it's really great at what you want to do and what you want to study. That can also be a great opportunity for students.